All right, so I'm going to be talking today about developing research basics. I'm going to share my screen. I would love for this to be interactive or to be whatever you would like it to be. So please feel free to ask questions as we're going. And we really can edit it as needed. So if you want us to take certain things out, we're happy to do that. Dr. Kari Manu is going to watch the chat and let me know if there's anything that comes up. So I think of this as like the basics of research. There's so much that can be said on how to do research. Like I have quite a few talks, but I wanted to like boil this down to like the foundational, like the concrete setting of doing that. So actually, before we get started, I think we're like an intimate enough group. Can everyone introduce themselves and say who they are? And then we'll go ahead and answer the next question. What is your experience in doing research? You've never done it. You have a good idea. You have presented at a conference. You have an IRB done. Like where are you? Or you presented or published something. I am going to keep moving forward. I'm moving our pictures over to the side. All right. So for today, we're going to talk about options for program management. It sounds like some people have published, but everyone's done a little bit of something. It sounds like, and I the curriculum development framework as a way to do research. So I'll lay that out for you. And then let's check in about our next step. So my background, I am a family medicine doctor. I'm here at Florida International University in Miami, Florida. We're very warm right now. Actually, we're having quite hot weather, like in the 90s today. And my background is I have done research and been the primary author. I have done a lot of research through the SARA program that we have through STFM, where you can submit questions and then get that information back. Statistics are not my strength, but seeing scholarship everywhere is my strength. And I am the Assistant Dean for Faculty Development at FIU, which means that I help people to grow in this area around research. Also as educators in all of their various roles. I help our faculty to grow. So that's a little bit about my background. So we've already answered this question about what your experience is with doing a research project. So I want to check in with you. And I don't know if people can annotate on their screens. If you can you put a mark or something next to what your top 3 barriers are? And I'll go through them. And if you can't, it's okay. I always have to try to figure out annotation each time. So a big barrier is time. That's why I have that in the largest font. That's the one that many people commonly say. And then fear is another big one. And then fear might be broken down into imposter syndrome as a possible fear subset or a mindset subset. People feel like maybe they should already feel competent or like, oh, if I ask people for help, they're going to realize I don't know what I'm doing. Fixed mindset. I just can't do this. I have this fixed mindset around being able to do scholarship or research. I have a bit of a fixed mindset about certain technologies. So I know I have to really push myself in certain areas and statistics. I'm just not good at statistics. And then I don't know, just not knowing how to do it. That might be another barrier. Culture. There might not be anyone who's role modeling doing scholarship or research, or you might not have permission or support to do research. And then the muse, the idea that writing or research occurs when I feel moved to do writing or research, right? Offshoot with the annotating. Well done. So we've got one, and I cannot remember, how do we annotate? So on the toolbar, there's something that says annotate, and you can touch your screen, or you can move your mouse and make a mark when you click annotate. So we got another time. And if you want to, you can another time, you can take yourself off mute if you want and call it out or put it in the chat. Oh, and Sandy, Johnny on the spot with the Sarah information in the chat. Thanks, Sandy. I just had a Sarah program or a Sarah article published. I'm very excited about it. So imposter syndrome, and I don't know. The reason I'm asking about this is this helps me, and resources. I can help you with that and support. I want to focus on the items that we want us to focus on today. And I'm going to actually kind of skip the items that aren't checked off. This is kind of a choose your own adventure presentation. All right, team. So I'm going to write down those items. So time, imposter, don't know, culture, and that includes support and resources, and muse. All right, let's do it. So I'm going to clear our annotations. I can never remember how to do this. Hang in there. Oh, team, I'm sorry. I used to be very good at this. I mentioned my challenges with. Nope, that didn't do it. Ha, annotate, clear. Got it. Okay, done. All right. And escape. There we go. All right, I apologize for my tech deficiencies. So we're going to talk through time. I want to help you think about reframing your thoughts around time. And then imposter syndrome, I want to help you think about how to address that. Not knowing, I want to talk to you about writing and publishing as a skill, and we'll talk about some of the information around it. There's a lot more to know than what I'm going to talk about. This is like the Cliff Notes version, but this will give you somewhere to start. And then the idea of culture through resources, we'll talk about that, and the muse. So we'll talk about that as well. All right, let's get started. So yes, time we're going to start talking about. This is kind of my slide that I always use to split things up. So the myth, and I want to see where I got some of these slides. Kim Skorupski at Johns Hopkins has a great online PowerPoint presentation about WAGs, writing accountability groups. So with her permission, I have reached out to her and I'm using some of her slides. I've modified some of them, but many of them I've used as is, and this is one of them. The myth, she says, is I can't find time to write. I need like big chunks of time. And I used to think this too, but actually, if we practice writing, if I actually have 10 minutes and I know where I ended my project, I can pick it up and actually do something in 10 minutes and come back to it. So we'll talk a little bit about this idea. This is something else that really helps me in general, because if I have, in order to find time, I need to look at all of my time management stuff. So this is Covey's time management matrix. Urgent and important things we should do right away. These are crises, medical emergencies, pressing problems, deadline-driven projects, last-minute preparations for a scheduled activity, like getting ready for the conference, right, the day before. This is what's called the quadrant of necessity. Like, we got to get the stuff done here. But stuff over here in the not urgent but important quadrant often gets pushed aside a little bit. And it's because it is important, but it's not urgent. So things like preparation, planning, prevention, like getting our colonoscopies, things like that. Values clarification, like kind of understanding, okay, what's my value? What's my mission statement? Exercise, I can certainly identify with that one. Relationship building and true recreation and relaxation. All of these things we say in family medicine are really important, but we often aren't able to do well for ourselves. And this is the quadrant of quality and personal leadership. These require focus. This first quadrant requires management. And down here, the third and fourth quadrants, we're encouraged to try to avoid doing some of these things. I have to say, though, I really enjoy organization in some ways, which is in this quadrant of waste. It's not urgent, it's not important, but it makes me feel happy. So in some ways, it might be relaxing, but it's probably not something I need to spend my time on. Hopefully, these are the things we can try to delegate if we have somebody we can delegate to. But I want to help you to think about how we can look at those things that are important. So the myth of no time, some suggestions. Don't multitask. It's actually impossible to multitask. What is important to do is focus on one thing and then focus on the next thing. Like, we might have to task switch, delegate impossible, if possible. I'm working on a paper with several other people, and I really this week had to say to the last author, I'm the first author, hey, I cannot get to this week. Can you have a go at this? And it was very uncomfortable. I don't like asking for help, But she was more than happy. She was like, yes, I'm on it. I will work on that. So I'm learning to delegate. It's a skill. Schedule your priorities, which is proactive versus being reactive, like changing and editing your schedule. So what are your priorities? Block off time. For instance, Michelle Obama said she had to block off time for exercise at the beginning of the year. That I was like, wow, that's amazing. I wish I could do that. But she scheduled her priorities. And then look at your calendar. Is there a spot that you can look at your calendar once a week and kind of adjust things to better align with your mission? So let's talk here about imposter syndrome. I'm going to stay focused on imposter syndrome for the next item. So with imposter syndrome, it's important, here it is, imposter syndrome. It's important to understand what it is. So the definition of imposter syndrome, the erroneous belief that one's successes are a result of luck or chance and not fully deserved. And where am I getting this information? The Curbsiders is a podcast, and they interviewed Dr. Kimberly Manning. She's over here. I follow her on Twitter. She's a lovely person to follow on Twitter. She has a lot of insight as an educator and as a physician. And she has done a lot of work around imposter syndrome, and she's very vocal about imposter syndrome. So this next part, imposter syndrome is not simply a self-imposed insecurity that can be easily overcome if we just change our thinking or professional behavior. It's actually related to structural barriers that women and minorities in academia face. We might not see our faces represented in leadership. We might not have adequate resources, right? Many of us who are minorities or women in academia are paying what we call the service tax, where we are told, hey, go see these patients, hey, go do these other things. And other people might have more resources. My department chair has many more resources than me, but I'm somehow supposed to be more productive without those resources. And we might have insufficient follow through from administrators in regards to building that equitable work environment. So it's not just in our heads, is what she's saying here. Her advice, Dr. Manning's advice, remember that imposter syndrome is common. It's not just you. It's part of a bigger system, and we can be a better bystander by accepting our differences and understanding societal pressures and be our authentic self. Something else that she tells me, or that she not tells me, but she's tweeted that really helps me a lot is that real imposters don't get imposter syndrome. Those people that are asking themselves, gosh, like, am I a fraud? Do I not know what I'm doing? I'm such an imposter. If you're asking that in your head, you're not an imposter. Like, that's the very definition of understanding who an imposter is and is not. People that are imposters don't ask themselves if they're imposters. This is, I think, my slide. I don't think I have another one. Oh, I do have one more. So shame is also related to imposter syndrome. So this is a great image that I got online. I have the link over here. But shame and imposter syndrome, a great antidote is something called a self-compassion break. So Kristen Neff is a researcher who's done a lot of work around self-compassion. And she says the way that you take a self-compassion break is to recognize, oh, here I am. Here we go. It's happening right now. Whatever it is in your body that's happening. And say, she says to put your hand over your heart. I do it at the beginning. She says at step 2, but put your hand over your heart and say, this is a moment of struggle, of suffering. And then connect yourselves to other. We all struggle in our lives, that this is a universal human experience. Okay, everyone around me is having this too at some point. And then with your hand over your heart, may I be kind to myself, or whatever your version is. May I be loving to myself. May I be patient with myself. This is really helpful. I know it's very touchy-feely, but we're with a bunch of people in family medicine or family medicine related. So hopefully this can be helpful. If I can have this moment of recognition, awareness up here, and getting curious or being compassion and connecting, that's the antidote. So the self-compassion break can help a lot with that moment of imposter syndrome. All right. I'm going to pause there for a minute. Any questions or any comments on that? I know it's super touchy-feely. All right.
But I would say there's science behind it, right?
Yes, there is science behind it. Kristen Neff has a lot of good publications out there around self-compassion. And if you look up imposter syndrome, there's so much information. Like I think that it's an area ripe for study right now.
Yeah, and I must confess that I actually do suffer from imposter syndrome. I did it just at the beginning of this meeting, when I introduced myself, because I still have to remind myself, especially for me feeling following after Susie, I have come to terms with me on this imposter syndrome for this. So it's not unusual. It happens on every big project that you have coming up in your life. The thing is that you have to recognize, you have to learn to recognize it early so you can get over faster to the moment that it will come that you will feel secure of yourself. But yeah, it happens on all stages of career. So don't feel bad with yourself and, like, oh my God, I've been doing this for 6 years and I haven't been able. It's natural. Literature says that it happens on every stage of the career.
That's right. That's right. And I would also add to that, one of the things that I've done, I haven't seen in the literature, is just to hold space for it. I don't know if you've seen the movie A Beautiful Mind, but the character he just was like, okay, like, here we go again. But I just recognize, okay, imposter syndrome. All right, imposter syndrome, Susie. I hear you. I see you. And I just carry her with me. And I'm like, all right, I've got space for you. I'm going to kind of bear witness to your feelings. They're real. I get that they're real. I'm not going to try to squash them or push them away. And I kind of walk through the world just holding her hand and saying, all right, we've got this. And that's okay to do, whatever the version is of yourself that you kind of want to hold space for.
I think to add to what Susie and Natalia said, I think to recognize that it's a thing, it's not a figment of your imagination, and that, that's the first step to addressing it, is recognizing that you have it. And as Natalia said, you have it at all stages of your career. I still have it several times. The first question I asked people when they reached out to me to be the director of this is like, why are you asking me to do this? Like, why me? And then somebody said, because you know what you're doing. And I'm like, oh, okay. I guess I do. So, yes. Yeah. So recognize it, and then, find mentors, find peers who can help you sort of talk yourself out of it.
Yeah. Or I've quit fighting it because I feel like that gives it bigger power. Now I just hold space for it. I'm like, all right, we've got this. Imposter Susie and real Susie, we've got this together.
Yes.
And Afsha, one of the best advice I received from an STFM mentor is to stop at that moment when you feel it and say, I love that. That's huge. That's
huge.
That's beautiful. All right. I know this is touchy-feely. I wanted to spend time, ever since I've added this actually to my research talk, this is one of the things that in the evaluation, people are like, I'm so glad you talked about that. Like, it's the untalkable that we need to talk about. All right, team. So I'm going to skip growth mindset because that wasn't an issue, but I'm going to go next to culture, resources. So my best advice here is to seek out and ask for help from people who you feel like have the skill set or the resources that might be able to help you. So mentors here, colleagues at your site, or a counselor or a coach if it's around resources around like asking for help or certain skill sets. So mentoring is really important. Mentoring is a great way that you can get resources around skills. And the literature here actually is that this is from 2015, but that mentors are even more important for female and minority novice investigators. Having a research mentor has been identified as a strong indicator for publishing and obtaining grants. And there are a lot of hidden rules around like writing something and doing research that a mentor can help a junior investigator navigate. So how do you find a research or writing mentor? Look for people doing similar work. Ask. This is one of the reasons I encourage you to reach out to other new faculty scholars who might be doing similar stuff. I did MSETI with STFM years and years ago, And I did a few publications and presentations with folks from MSETI, like from the cohort that I was in. My department or institution, I have a good friend who in my a good friend and colleague in my department. I'm sorry, I can't speak. Who I've done a lot of publications with, and then my academic society, STFM, actually has coaching programs. Or when you're doing a presentation, if you are getting asked questions by somebody and you're like, yes, we are simpatico, that's a great person to reach out to do some work with. And then another way to think about STFM is if you're going to all the same sessions with somebody and you see them over and over again, then I've had that a few times. I'm like, we need to talk. Like, we obviously have some shared values. Let's check in and see if we can mentor each other or be colleagues in this. The WMC has SIG, special interest groups. They have a faculty development one. I think they have a research special interest group as well. They're a great place to plug in. And then I get a monthly lit search that I've set up on the NCBI lit page. And another colleague says she likes to use QXMD. It didn't work for me, but maybe it works for you. Like, it worked, but it didn't fit my needs. So I like my monthly lit searches are around scholarship, faculty development, feedback. Like, I think that those are my three main ones that I have set up. So I just get like all the monthly new articles sent to me about those topics. And reading articles on a topic helps me to think about like what the next steps might be around that topic. Oh, and I see, thank you, Sandy. She put some more information, leadership through scholarship fellows. We've got MSETI and the virtual coaching program in the chat. So this is information on there's this great webinar by the URM. I can't remember what they were called at that time. There is working group, scholarship working group. It has a different name, but this is an excellent presentation that you could pull some information about research resources from. And then this might help with your with this idea of time, but also with resources, is a WAG. So a WAG is something out of Johns Hopkins with Skorupski that she's talked a lot about. WAG stands for Writing Accountability Group. And basically with WAG, you agree to meet for 10 weeks at an hour a week. I've done it a few times and we actually didn't meet for the whole hour. It was about 45 minutes. We have like 8 to 15 minutes of checking in and goal setting. Okay, this is what we're going to do. And then 30 minutes of timed communal writing. I think of this as like parallel play. We all turn off of our cameras and our microphones, and we do whatever writing we need to do, or research, or looking up statistics, or working on our IRB. And then we check in for about 10 minutes afterwards of, okay, this is what I did. This was my barrier. This was my challenge. I love WAGs because there's a lot of peer feedback and peer mentoring that you get. There's some accountability. Some people say they like the competition. It helps you to be intentional about your writing. And I think the secret sauce of a writing accountability group is the community of practice, because you have this feeling of belonging with a group who is doing something similar. So what else with resources? I think the mentor can help you a lot. I'm going to pause for a second. What other resources might we be looking for around scholarship? Because resources came up a couple of times. Anyone who put resources, do you want to clarify?
I think one thing for me would be something that you highlighted on earlier, just someone that can help with interpretation of data, like a statistician that can help us. I think oftentimes there's limitations with just literature search within our institution on, maybe needing a loan to get articles. And I think that can also be a barrier with our resources.
All right, thank you, Asha. So for those two things, I have figured out like who in my school does statistics. It's our evaluations dean. And I reach out to them pretty regularly to say, hey, like, I know there's something here. This is my data. Like, can you please analyze it? And you'll be an author on this paper. So that's one of the things that I have learned to do around statistics. Our dean is starting to realize we really don't have enough resources here. It's kind of a who you know situation. And he is starting to think about formalizing some kind of policy around how people can reach out to our statistics person. There's also someone in our department who's really good at stats. So I actually would really encourage you to like kind of nose around and get to know folks and like who does stats, who is a really good stats person that you can work with. They need to be responsible and follow through. You don't want to have to like ride them to get things done. That's important. And they hopefully also can make good graphs. Like I think about like what I want my stats person to do. I want them to understand like the statistics stuff that I don't, and what like the analysis is. They need to be able to write kind of a cohesive method section that I can then edit. And then they need to be able to make tables for me. That's like what I think of what I need from a stats person. Manu, I see you shaking your head. And do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I wanted to say, whatever it is, the gap that you're facing while you're writing a paper, like Susie said, find the person who can fill that gap. And I am always of the philosophy that anybody who contributes to a paper is a co-author.
Yeah.
Doesn't dilute the value of the paper just because you have two more authors on it. So I think that's fine. I also try, before I start writing, to think about what are the various perspectives in this paper and who needs to be on it. And so that way you start with a team and you're not doing the bulk of the work by yourself. Mm-hmm. And I direct a research division within family medicine. We have a writing group that meets. It's a WAG, but we meet an hour and a half every Friday morning, 9 to 10:30. And it's a range of people in that group. Everybody from people like me to postdocs and research associates come to that group. And we do 5 to 10 minutes of just updates. And then the rest of the time is writing time. And one of the things that's not traditionally done in WAGs, but that we do is we offer that if anybody wants us to read, comment, review, we are glad to look at versions. And for me, that is the only way I can get any writing done, because my calendar just gets filled and I can never find the time to write. And so that is like holy grail time that I will not let anybody touch, unless I have a grant due that day or something like that. But that too is writing, so it's okay. So yeah, so that's the two pieces of advice I have, is to try to put a team together. Don't try to write a paper all by yourself, because that's overwhelming and it'll always get pushed aside because you'll have other things to do.
Well said. Thank you. I have an article I wrote with a colleague called Collaborative Writing. I'll send that out to the group afterwards, and it kind of lays some of this out as well to group. Yeah, I'm a big fan of scheduling time to write on my calendar as well. All right, team. I'm going to go to our next item, which is not knowing. So let's go here. So not knowing. So this is some of the basics around writing. So let's break some of this down. And this also has to do with the muse. So writing is hard. Let's just acknowledge that. We are not taught how to write, and we're not given a lot of time to write, but it's part of our job, and it certainly impacts our promotions. So I want to encourage you to embrace that writing is messy and a process. So I'm going to cuss for a little bit, but it's in a professional reason. Anne Lamott wrote a book called Bird by Bird, and it's about her like writing experience, and it offers advice for somebody who's writing. And I love this. She says, start by getting something, anything down on paper. And she talks about the shitty first draft and how the first draft, the shitty first draft of something will look very different than the final draft, and that is okay and appropriate. But the scariest thing is to face a blank sheet of paper. It's much less scary to face a shitty first draft that then you can edit and go to town on. So the first draft is lawfully, appropriately going to require extensive editing and formatting, and that's normal and appropriate. I often see junior faculty and our students are like, oh, but like this doesn't look like what you write. And I'm like, that's because you're seeing the end product. Like you don't see like this messy, like the paper that I start out with and concept mapping, and you're not seeing like how the sausage is made. So really important to be kind to yourself and your team as you dig into your revisions. And writing is a process. It is not just like one and done. Each round of writing and edits gets you closer to that final product. And I also like that Anne Lamont says that writing is confronting, messy, and uncomfortable. It's okay to be uncomfortable. Writing can bring up your own fears and judgments. That's one of the ways it's confronting. You're alone with your writing. There's nothing like that to like kick off your imposter syndrome or feelings of shame and doubt. And I love this quote that she has in her book. Anne Lamont says, few writers go about their business feeling dewy and thrilled. So few people that write like are just like Snow White with the birds on their shoulders. They're usually like down on their knees scrubbing and like getting the work done. And feeling really uncomfortable and being confronted by their internal selves. So fears are meant to be faced and overcome or carried around. That's one way that I've learned to overcome. And doing so often helps us grow as educators and people. It's such a reminder to me. Every time I face this stuff, I'm better at it. So now what I do, it's going to come up because it always comes up every time I'm writing or putting together something that's like, I'm trying to like synthesize something into a product or a PowerPoint. And I'm like, all right, here's that feeling again. But what does the evidence show? The evidence shows every time I have this, it's uncomfortable, but I put in the effort and I'm able to work through this. So I encourage you to ask yourself, what does the evidence show? So let's talk about now types of research. I heard a lot about quality improvement. It is so much easier to have a scholarship mindset to see research everywhere than do something and then try to retrofit it and go, oh, that project I just did, I should publish that. Finishing it and going, wow, that's like square peg, round hole. It doesn't fit quite as well. It's better to put a round peg in a round hole. So let's talk about what that metaphor means. I encourage you to do the work, present the work, and publish the work. So for any work that you're doing, hopefully you can get three areas of productivity out of it. First, we're going to do the work. So this is an example of doing some kind of work. Somebody might have developed and implemented a chart review and texting project where patients are being texted about their annual fecal occult blood to improve colon cancer screening in patients lacking insurance. Our students did this at one of our sites. So then if you're doing this quality improvement project, think about it from the outset. All right, so if I'm doing this, how can I think about presenting it and publishing it? So if there's a student involved, like our annual research day at FIU, or the site, like we have hospital affiliate sites, they have research week, or at a regional, state, or national conference. STFM has quality improvement conference. STFM also has the MSD conference that has a very high acceptance rate. And then publish the work. If a student was involved at FIU, Curious is a great opportunity. If there's a site like Cleveland Clinic of Florida has their own site. And then there might also be society journals or state journals. So I'm going to run out of time soon. I'm thinking about, okay, so hang in there. These slides are useful. I have used these slides with permission from UT Southwestern. Here's the link at the bottom for these slides. So if we're studying patients or providers, here are a few opportunities. Studying patients' attitudes, knowledge, beliefs about their diseases, treatments, providers. Examples might be, as we heard Manu say, like beliefs about COVID or vaccines or medical mistrust. With studying providers, it might be about knowledge, attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, experience, or personal characteristics. Types of scholarship you can realistically do with some assistant might be chart review. This does take a little bit of assistance. You need access to the EMR and you need a stats person, really important. So an example of this might be what percentage of patients get their guideline concordant care, such as what are some of the reasons for lack of follow-up colonoscopy in patients with a positive FIT test? That might be a great example. So when these questions come up, think scholarship, think how can I do research with this? Qualitative research is a little bit different. This is more what I have been doing. Interpreting or coding transcripts of conversations from interviews or focus groups. For instance, reasons for hospital readmission or barriers to end-of-life care among minorities with advanced cancers. So survey research. This is, Sarah is a great example of survey research. And examples might be to help select important domains, refine questions and responses, and interpret findings. That's not an example. That's like the criteria. Here's some examples. Patients' positive or negative beliefs about statins or inhaled steroids, weighing the pros or cons of carotid surgery versus stenting. That's a big one. Physician attitudes about the impact of EMR. We have a lot of thoughts about this, right? And then medical education research. This is where most of my research has been. Assessing training knowledge, attitudes, clinical reasoning skills, or faculty teaching them. And survey research or direct observations can be used here. And then quality improvement is the last one. Quality improvement easily translates into scholarship because you have the data built in. I'm going to make a plug. This is something that the AAMC puts out, and I'll send this PowerPoint to you afterwards. The link at the bottom of this slide is for this research in medical education, a primer for medical students. I know you're not students, but this is an excellent resource for anyone getting started in research, medical students, residents, faculty. It takes you through what is med ed research, why do it, getting started, structuring your projects, timelines, and how to present and publish. Excellent, excellent resource. I also highly encourage, and ignore this Zoom chat. I'm sorry, I took this from another talk, but Keyline is an excellent podcast, and it's really geeky and nerdy, which I love. They've added a fourth person as their co-host. She's from the Uniformed Services University, and these three folks are from Canada, the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons in Canada. But Keyline stands for Literature in Medical Education, and it's like a journal club podcast, and I just love it. I get to listen to them talk about different articles, and as they talk about these articles, I learn new methodology. I learn what is a quality article, what like they give advice on how to improve a paper or what they think they should have done instead. So we are almost out of time. I'm actually going to skip. No, I'm going to give you the highlight reel. All right. So there's a lot here, but if you are working on a project, these are the things, hang in there. All right. I'm going to give you this one. I have a worksheet that I put together for our junior faculty. So what is the project idea? What is the problem and the need, including the relevance? This turns into your introduction and background section. What does the literature say about it? Like, what's the standard of that's being currently done? And this is part of your introduction or background section. What's the project's goal? What's the outcome or objective that we hope? This is going to be a part of your background section, but also it helps for you to start framing your methods section. And then what is the strategy or method? How do you want to implement it? What are the details? That's your methods section. How will this project be evaluated? How do I know if it's successful? And do I need a statistics faculty person? This is going to contribute to your results section and a little bit to your method section. And then what's the impact of the results? Why are they important? How do they inform medical education or patient care? And this is going to be part of your discussion section. How could this project be improved? Do I have any limitations? Like, how does the data contribute to improving this project or situation? This is part of your discussion, which we also call the reflective critique. Then think about, where can I publish this? Where can I present this or disseminate this information? So I want to share a few more slides around project management. So the process of publication, we submit an article. The editor looks at the article and either rejects it or sends it to peer review. After peer review is done, it either gets rejected or accepted, or it comes back to us for revision. So that's kind of the overview of publication. I wanted to highlight these next three slides, and then I'm going to call it over. Think about a task management system. So if you only have 20 minutes to write, you can quickly go to your, like, wherever you are and go, okay, this is where I was. This is what I need to work on. Trello is a free online system. I like it a lot when I'm working with groups that are at other places. You can do a free Trello and you can move these little tabs back and forth. I also have seen this on Twitter. Ruth Godian tweeted this. She has a whiteboard in her office. This would be very intimidating for me to see all the time. But she has a Post-it note for every project she's thinking about: ideas, then IRB, data collection, data analysis, writing, submission, awaiting review, revision, and published. I actually like this version better. It's a PowerPoint that I have on my computer and I can update it. And I've added a few other items. So idea, which she had, I want a discussion about how the group is going to function and author roles and who's the first author, who's the last author. I want that from the get-go because I want to know who's responsible for what. And then a literature search needs to be done. And then the same as her: IRB, data collection, analysis, writing, awaiting review, revision, and accepted. So team, I'm going to stop. Oh, and this is the article I'm going to send to you about writing collaboratively. I'm going to stop right there. I know that was a lot of information. What questions do you have? Oh, and Sandy put information about Primer in there. Thank you, Sandy. I love publishing in Primer. It's very friendly and kind.